Hang on, let's play a game. Add to the comments what I've forgotten. Okay, so now that 2025 is coming to a close, right? This is the quarter that everyone goes, how did we do? Can we hire? Do we have to lay off? Well, let's talk about how Trump did, shall we? Okay, so it is the worst job economy in 25 years. Holy shit. 25 years. Years. That would make him the worst president in history. So let's talk about that. His job approval rating currently sits at 20%. Yeah, I think W might have broken that, but I'm not sure. Otherwise, I think it's that's the lowest job approval rating for a president I think I've ever seen. Ever. And I'm 50 fucking years old. I've seen some things. Then the election results from this week have not a single fucking Republican won a damn thing. Not one. Not one. He can't get the government to open back up. He can't get the Republicans to null and void the filibuster because they know next term, it ain't going to be a Republican president. They know that. They know that. So they need to make sure they don't do shit now that's going to fuck them up later. What else? He absolutely has not and cannot get Putin to stop the war in Ukraine. What else am I forgetting? I mean, there's a lot, but come on. I think that's just this week. What am I forgetting? Thanks.
Trump is telling families to starve until he gets his way. Donald Trump says food stamps, the SNAP benefits that feed 42 million Americans, won't go out until Democrats reopen the government. That means no groceries for millions of Americans until they give him what he wants. And what he wants is a budget deal that would cut health care for millions of Americans, including reduced Medicaid funding and lower Affordable Care Act subsidies. The Democrats are refusing to go along and demanding protections for health care programs. On Tuesday, Trump posted on Truth Social that benefits will be given only when radical left Democrats open up the government and not before. Hours later, his press secretary Caroline Leavitt tried to walk it back, saying the USDA will pay the benefits after all. But that's not what Trump said. A federal court had already ordered the USDA to issue at least partial payments by draining its contingency fund. Money meant for wars or disasters. And thanks solely to the Republicans, this is a disaster. Now Trump's hinting that he might ignore that order. Leavitt says they're following the ruling. Trump says they're not. No one in the Trump regime seems to actually know who's in charge. House Speaker Mike Johnson praised the White House for helping struggling families. Withholding SNAP benefits from tens of millions of families because you want to cut the health care of millions of families doesn't exactly help struggling families. Republicans have also refused to pass a bill to fund SNAP separately. They'd rather use hunger as leverage. Don't let the Republicans gaslight you. This shutdown is their fault.
Good morning. How's it going? Thursday thoughts for today. So I know I did my Trump in the horrible, no good, very bad election night special edition yesterday, but I didn't get to do all of the things that I want to do. No, I'm not going to laugh today, but there was one in particular that I had wanted to talk about that I was really, really happy to hear about. And I didn't hear about it until I was heading out the door for work. My husband had on Dr. Carr and they were talking about it. And that is something that was really important that has not been talked about as much was in Mississippi. And in Mississippi, they have had the supermajority in Mississippi for a long time in their Senate. And election night, they flipped 2 Senate seats in their state. And now they do not have the supermajority anymore. Republicans don't. And that is huge. That is very huge. They did it in Iowa. And now they've done it in Mississippi. So The hope is there. I'm excited about all the things that I've seen. I just hope that the momentum keeps going. But one thing that I did like that I saw the Democratic chair do in an interview, and he said, hey, we had a good night and now the work begins for next year. So Democrats are not playing. They're already working on next year. But all of the good news from the smaller elections across the country has just been phenomenal. And I mean, even in ruby red districts, they flip school boards. And one thing I'm going to tell you, because I am an educator, when you mess with people's kids' education, it does not matter what social class they're in. It does not matter if they're MAGA, Democrat, whatever. When you mess with their kids' education, they're going to vote either way because that's their kids. And all of that book banning and trying to tell people what they can do, and especially messing with special education, people aren't going to go for that. And as a teacher, I'm an independent voter, but I've had MAGA students in my classroom, and I don't treat them any different because a kid is a kid. And I've had parents say, oh, I wish you were going to the next grade, Miss Warren, because I really loved you, and I want my kid. They're going to do for their kids. And they know people who are going to do for their children. It's a big difference. And when you start messing with people's children, that's what's gonna hurt the Republican Party. And getting these SNAP benefits and people cannot feed their kids, very bad moves. And Trump is melting down, and the bad move to sit there and remove air controllers and do all this stuff at the airports, ruin people's Thanksgiving, I don't think that's a good look. But hey, they're going to hold on to the hope that all of their old little tricks have worked. And I think America's tired of the tricks.
Caroline Leavitt is somehow bragging about Trump's job growth as we just got numbers proving we've had the largest amount of layoffs since 2003. She posted this article literally minutes after we got the news saying Trump touts private sector job growth, efforts to shrink federal workforce. But here's reality. We're on month 10 of Trump's presidency and layoffs are the highest they've been in more than 20 years. Job cuts last month increased by more than 153,000. They're up 175% from October last year. In total, companies have announced more than 1 million job cuts in 2025, up 65% from the same period last year. This was the worst October since 2003. That's the highest total for October in over 20 years and the highest total for a single month in the fourth quarter since 2008. Technology continues to lead in private sector job cuts as companies are restructuring because of AI, slower demand, and efficiency pressures. However, retail, warehousing, media, and nonprofits have also been impacted sectors. Yet, while workers across the country deal with rising costs and struggle to find work, Trump and the GOP tout affordability and the return of a domestic economy. Only the Trump administration could find a way to brag about job growth as there have been over 1 million layoffs this year alone.
Hey everybody. It looks like the Supreme Court might finally put some brakes on Donald Trump's authoritarian power grab. The thing that seems to have pushed a couple conservative justices over the edge is Trump's tariffs. Here's what you need to know. I'm Liz Oyer, the former pardon attorney for the Department of Justice. Yesterday, the Supreme Court heard arguments in a case challenging Trump's tariff policy. But the case is not just about tariffs. It's about enforcing basic constitutional order. Our Constitution divides power among 3 branches of government: Congress, the courts, and the president. This is called separation of powers, and the purpose is to prevent the president from becoming a king. One of the powers the Constitution specifically assigns to Congress is the power to impose taxes. Tariffs are a type of tax, so no president has ever tried to unilaterally impose tariffs until Donald Trump. Trump's tariffs are a brazen power grab. He's taking a power that has always belonged to Congress and trying to make it his. How can he do this? Well, he's claiming it's justified because of a national emergency. He's relying on a law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. That law gives the president certain extra powers in cases of national emergencies caused by foreign threats. Trump is claiming that our trade deficit, which has existed for 50 years, is a national emergency that justifies imposing tariffs. Yesterday, 2 conservative justices, John Roberts and Neil Gorsuch, expressed serious doubts about whether Trump is actually allowed to do this. Gorsuch said very directly that he is concerned that Trump is, gradually but continually taking too much power away from the people's elected representatives, meaning Congress. If the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs, it will be a major step toward restoring constitutional order in our country. It will also be a major blow to Project 2025. The Project 2025 playbook relies heavily on emergency powers. There are lots of laws in our country, like IEPA, that give the president special powers in true cases of national emergencies. Trump, of course, is abusing these laws by declaring everything an emergency: crime, immigration, trade, etc. Trump has already used emergency powers to justify hundreds of executive actions that would normally require approval by Congress or regulators. Essentially, Trump is trying to cram down a massive political agenda by declaring emergencies and doing an end run around the Constitution. If the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs, that will be a major step toward reining in his imperial presidency. It could take a couple of weeks or even months to get a final ruling, so I'll keep you posted.
Breaking news as Trump is having his post-election meltdown on Truth Social, and he is trying to do this rebrand where he's going to try and bring costs down, or at least tell people that's what he's going to do, which is the entire thing he ran on in his campaign and why people voted for him, and he failed to deliver on in his first year and has done the exact opposite, raise the cost of literally everything for everyone. Now, this tirade that's going on is with videos now. He's recorded videos. They almost look AI. It's really bizarre. And he seems to be reading old Truth Social posts from days to weeks ago. I'm going to show you one that really stuck out to me because it's kind of crazy.
As I've said for years, Obamacare is a total disaster waiting to happen. Rates are going through the roof for the really bad health care that you're not getting even. Do something, Democrats. Sit down and do something. We want to make it better, or we want to get something that's good. Obamacare is a disaster, too expensive, and the rates are going too high. I said it right from the beginning. It's no good.
This is exactly why we are in a shutdown. It's because Trump refuses to negotiate on health care with the Democrats. They want to do something. They're trying to do something. This is what they are doing. Even Trump's own Marjorie Taylor Greene is extremely frustrated, upset, calling them out because they have not been able to propose yet one single healthcare proposal. Democrats are in D.C. working, trying to do something, and Mike Johnson has the Republicans still out of session. Make this make sense, guys. I mean, Trump is trying to video post his way out of this. He lost, the Republicans lost on affordability, and he's trying to recover, but it's not going to work. Everyone's wise to his game now. Let me know if you agree. Comment, like, share, spread the word, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you back here for the 411.
Last night was a stunning rebuke of Donald Trump and Republican policies. We saw Democrats win big on almost every level. Governors, attorney generals, lieutenant governors. We saw mayoral races swing for Democrats. We saw county commission seats, school boards. We saw in Georgia the first statewide election of 2 Democrats to the public service commissions handling utilities. In Mississippi, the state Senate broke the Republican supermajority when the state elected 2 Democrats to the state Senate. And Donald Trump's response to all of this is that, well, the Senate needs to go to work. The Senate needs to get rid of the filibuster. So not only will they pass the continuing resolution, but they will also pass voting reform acts, all that are Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 based, so that Donald Trump and the Republicans can continue to suppress voting. Because already this morning, Donald Trump saying, well, the election results aren't in because mail-in ballots haven't been counted yet. Even when these are stunning double-digit wins across the country, Donald Trump is already sowing the seeds of voter fraud, voter intimidation, and wanting to suppress voters going into the midterms. Because last night showed us, if nothing else, Republicans are in trouble in 2026 and likely 2028.
Holy shit, you guys need to prepare for the marmalade meltdown of the millennium. Because that crack you just heard wasn't the sound of Donald Trump getting his ass handed to him on midterm eve. That's my name for the little taste of the future we just enjoyed. It was the sound of the first fantastic fracture in Donald Trump's economic legacy, courtesy of a jackhammer operated by the Supreme Court justices he put on the bench. And I am tantalizingly titillated as I await the tasty toddler tantrum that is definitely on its way. Because opening arguments began in the case that's going to determine if 3/4 of Donald Trump's tariffs will not only be yeeted off the earth and directly into the sun, but also if the money collected through those tariffs over the past 8 months will have to be refunded to the Americans and the American business owners that paid them. Now, I knew this case could get spicy, but I was not expecting day one fireworks. Not just from the 3 liberal justices, but from Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, and John Roberts. Neil Gorsuch warned that Donald Trump's tariffs could be, and I quote, a one-way ratchet toward the gradual but continual accretion of power in the executive branch and away from the people's elected representatives. Coney Barrett asked Trump's lawyer, "Is it your contention that every country needed to be tariffed because of threats to the defense and industrial base? I mean, Spain? France? I mean, I could see it with some of these countries, but explain to me why. As many countries needed to be subject to the reciprocal tariff policy as are." And even John Roberts recognized that while tariffs could be used in dealings with foreign powers, in this case, the vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans. And he concluded that has always been a core power of Congress. In other words, he's recognizing a critical distinction. Yes, the president has the authority to regulate trade in an emergency with a specific country, but because tariffs are paid by American people and not foreign countries, a line has been crossed. Now, I know the Supreme Court has been frustrating, but there is one thing I can safely say about these justices and the many terrible decisions they've passed down. And that is that in every single case, they have telegraphed their decision in the tone of the questions during opening arguments. In this case, 6 justices asked decidedly brutal questions of the government. In fact, it was so obvious Trump's own lawyer recognized it. So he tried to pivot the argument by saying the tariffs are not about collecting money. They are about the regulatory effect. And he made the hilarious claim that it would actually be ideal if nobody paid them, because that would mean they were working. Of course, Trump is so stupid he can't play the strategy game for very long, because as we all know, he's been bragging all year about the billions and billions he's collected from tariffs. He even attended an event in Florida after the Supreme Court closed arguments on the first day, and once again bragged about how much money they collected. Now, the saddest and funniest thing is that Trump was clearly told by his lawyer to not make it about the money, because right before the hearing was about to begin, Trump screamed on the internet, as he always does, that his sole authority to tariff was literally life or death for this country. And without it, this country is virtually defenseless against countries who for years have taken advantage of us. Virtually defenseless, besides, of course, passing good trade deals. Trade deals which, of course, have unfortunately eluded our deal maker in chief. The L's are piling up, you guys. With the ranged lunatics like Fuentes creeping up on the right and the American people creeping up on behalf of the left, MAGA is in a vice. And with just a little more pressure, the bubble pops. And after we clean up a bit, we will be the ones to build what's next.
When people say that anyone can be racist, anyone can experience racism, they're missing something crucial. Because racism isn't just about individual prejudice, it's about power. And in the US, power has always been racialized. So let's talk about what racism actually is and how it operates on multiple levels that all connect and feed into each other. So first up is structural racism, which is the foundation. Structural racism is the big picture. It's the entire system. It's the network of laws, institutions, and cultural narratives built over centuries to benefit whiteness and disadvantage everyone else. It's not just a policy here or there. It's the water that we swim in. So from the start, the US was designed around a racial hierarchy. That's not surprising, right? And then the Constitution counted enslaved Africans as 3/5 of a person. And then native lands were stolen under the belief of manifest destiny. Chinese immigrants built railroads and other infrastructure that connected the nation and then were banned from citizenship, etc. There's so many more examples that I could name. All of these were not accidents, they were blueprints. The outcomes of those blueprints are still visible today. Everything ripples to the modern day. The racial wealth gap is staggering. The median white household holds about 8 times more wealth than the median black household, and that gap has barely changed in 50 years. Homeownership rates for black families are still lower today than they were before the Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968. And in healthcare, black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to be unalive from pregnancy-related causes than white women, no matter how educated or wealthy they are. That's structural racism. It's history showing up in the present tense. Next is institutional racism, which is the machinery. Institutional racism lives inside the systems: schools, police departments, corporations, hospitals, banks, courts. It's the policies and practices that seem neutral on paper but produce inequitable outcomes over and over and over again. Take education, for example. Schools in predominantly white areas receive about $23 billion more in funding each year than schools serving mostly students of color. That's not based on merit, it's based on property taxes, which are rooted in segregated housing policy, and systemic racism, and white supremacy. Or criminal justice. Black people are nearly 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white people for very similar crimes. Marijuana use is roughly equal across races, yet Black Americans are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for it. Healthcare also. In 2020, a survey found half of medical students and residents believed at least one myth about biological differences between Black and white patients, like the false idea that Black people have thicker skin or higher pain tolerance. Those myths lead to real harm, from underprescribed pain medication to ignored symptoms to a heightened Black maternal mortality rate. Institutional racism doesn't always look like hate, it often looks like routine, but its outcomes are always anything but neutral. Next is interpersonal racism, which is the expression of this. This is the part most people recognize. What happens between individuals, racial slurs,